There's some interesting things coming out of ComicsPRO 2024. It almost feels like Marvel and DC are listening to customers and retailers. First up, we have a DC event essentially fronted by one person, one creative voice. DC Comics are also going back to New Comic Wednesday instead of Tuesday, which was certainly something that a lot of retailers had a problem with. And we just have one new comic book day within the industry once again. And now Marvel are getting with the program, and they're making an enormous promise. Well, it feels like they're making an enormous promise. Remember when DC Comics said, we're going to hold the line at $2.99? That didn't last nearly as long as it should have, but people have been noticing the prices at Marvel and DC going up and up and up and up, and it's basically becoming untenable at this point. They're pricing themselves basically out of their customer range. And I have some good news, sort of. I don't know how Marvel Comics are going to do this, and I have some numbers backing up how difficult it will be. But at the ComicsPRO Retailer Summit in Pittsburgh this week, President of Marvel Entertainment, Dan Buckley, stated Marvel Comics will be emphasizing the $3.99 comic price point for most issues going forward, which represents quite a change. Dan Buckley told comic shops retailers at ComicsPRO that it is Marvel's plan to be a partner with comic stores not only now, but for the future. That included the free Marvel must-have editions, reestablishing creator editorial retreats post-pandemic to create new stories, and Marvel will be keeping special edition comics like the Red Band editions of Bloodhunt print only and not available digitally. There are certainly some intriguing details there from Dan Buckley. He was the keynote speaker, I believe, at ComicsPRO this year in Pittsburgh. But the big one is pricing most of their comic books at $3.99. Marvel has been getting very, very outrageous. A new number one for Marvel Comics, for the most part, is going to run you $5.99 at this point. If it's a major character or like an X-Men title or something related to Star Wars or even like 20th Century Fox or whatever, a regular title of those, for the most part, is going to run you $4.99 at this point. And they do have some number one issues that come out, in the $4.99 range. And every once in a while, if it's something so unimportant, they know no one's ever going to buy it, it will actually debut at $3.99. But their prices have been going up and up and up. And I've been talking about it here on the channel for several years now. But last year was really beginning to be the tipping point. I do the comic book solicitations videos exclusive on the Patreon where I talk about all the trends as far as the pricing, like how much is it going to cost you if you're a Batman fan or a Superman fan, or if you're a DC completionist and you have to have everything DC. And we break it down by the average price, per SKU or whatever. And there were a couple of months at the end of 2023 where the average Marvel comic was up in the $4.90 range. Actually, DC Comics actually went over $5 for a couple of months in the calendar year 2023. Although theirs are trending down just a little bit, it looks like they've cut out just a few of those really stupid $10 anthology books that no one ever asked for. But Marvel and DC have got to get their pricing under control. I understand inflation is a bitch right now. And we do know that paper costs have also been increasing over the last several years and all that kind of stuff. But there comes a point where 22 pages of story isn't really worth it anymore, especially with the way that they write comic books nowadays. For the most part, I would say 90 to 95% of every single DC ongoing and Marvel ongoing title, when you get an issue, you don't get a story anymore. You get a part of a story that's part of a 4 or 6 issue story arc. In the case of like a Tini Howard Catwoman 9 Lives, I believe that's a 10-part story. In fact, if you go read Detective Comics from Ram B, it's like a 30-part story. You get no resolution whatsoever within an actual comic book, and you end up spending a ton of money on these stories over time. And yes, they say, well, no, it's 32 pages or it's 40 pages. The fact of the matter is, if you open up a 32-page Marvel comic book, it's got 20 to 22 pages of stories, and then 10 to 12 pages of house ads. In a 40-page Marvel comic that comes out right now, it's going to have 12 to 14 pages of house ads, 26 to 28 pages of actual story, and they're absolutely ripping us off. And this is great news, hopefully, because Marvel Comics are the market leader, and what they do, basically everyone else follows. Hopefully, DC Comics will follow in their footsteps, and a lot of these other small publishers. This will not be easy for Marvel Comics to accomplish. And I've got some numbers to actually prove this, because their pricing has gotten out of hand. In April of 2024, in their solicitations, they provided 60 total new comic books. On average, they cost $4.74 per issue. Of those 9 are number one issues, the average price of a number one issue at Marvel Comics, $5.67. Absolutely outrageous. In Marvel Comics May 2024 solicitations, Marvel priced 28 new 32-page comic books at $4.99. As to the 32-page comics still at $3.99, there are actually 33 of them. So that's basically a 45-55 split between the $4.99, $3.99 price point on a 32-page comic book, because we do want to keep some type of similarity when it comes to page count. It feels like if they think people are going to want to buy it, it's $4.99. If they're not sure, it's $4.99. If they know nobody wants to buy it, it's probably going to be $3.99. And it gets pretty ridiculous, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. There isn't a single comic book that I can think of that's priced $3.99 right now. They're all $4.99. If you like the 20th Century Fox stuff, we're talking Alien, Predator, and now they have the Planet of the Apes stuff. All of that stuff initially was $4.99. I think they've realized the interest in Planet of the Apes really isn't there. So that has decreased down to $3.99. And really, there's only a couple of decent titles that you can get at that $4 price point. The one that really jumps to my head is Incredible Hulk, but all the other stuff that you actually want to read is all at that $5 price point. And they're going to have to bring those numbers down substantially if they want to provide a vast majority of their comic books at the $3.99 price point, because 55-45 isn't the right split on it. It needs to be more like 80-20 or 90-10. So they do have their work cut out for them. And for the most part, you know, when it comes to, well, we're going to charge you $5 for the 40-page comic book, I don't see any added benefit other than the fact that Marvel Comics can charge you more. The stories aren't noticeably better. The pacing isn't noticeably better. Actually, I would say the pacing is noticeably worse, because you can just see them doing filler and padding it out just to hit the page count, because most modern comic book writers refuse to give you resolution within a single comic book issue. This is great news. I hope that Marvel Comics follow through on this. I think Dan Buckley realizes he's got a lot of problems within their publishing department. Obviously, he's already kicked off Jordan D. White to the curb. I just did a video yesterday talking about the conversation surrounding Hercules and Iceman. Absolutely embarrassing. And now he's coming back, and I think he's going to dictate that they're going to lower the prices. Hell, lower the page count. Doesn't really matter. People should not be being forced to choose between food and a single issue of a comic book. They can't get that expensive. It has to be an impulse buy. And Marvel Comics and DC Comics have let this get way out of hand over the last few years. There were a couple of other items of note that have come out lately. One of them that I kind of mentioned there when I was talking about Dan Buckley, Marvel Comics have revealed via ComicsPRO a new initiative called Marvel Must-Haves. These free issues collect multiple iconic issues that spotlight the Marvel characters and comic book series currently at the forefront of pop culture. These stories have been handpicked to get fans in tune with current Marvel adventures and act as a perfect jumping on point for their new readers. The 3 issues collected in the first Marvel Must-Haves one-shot include Spider-Man Deadpool #1 from 2016, Immortal Thor #2 from 2023, and Miss Marvel the New Mutant #1 from 2023. The only one, obviously, there that people are going to be interested in is the Spider-Man Deadpool, Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness. Yes, thank you very much. As far as Immortal Thor goes, I imagine Marvel thought they had a hit on their hands, you know, using the Immortal title that Al Ewing had on Immortal Hulk. The only thing I know of note of Immortal Thor is it was, I think, the first appearance of Tyranno, some new celestial god thing that he introduced. I'm hot or cold on Al Ewing. I really enjoyed that story he did with like the Ant-Man 40th anniversary or whatever. But he really turned me off during his X-Men Red run. But I just haven't really gotten into Immortal Thor, but apparently Tyrannos is going to be a big deal in the future. You know, Miss Marvel, the New Mutant, co-written by Iman Vellani, the star of the Miss Marvel TV show, and co-written by Sabir Pirzada. Not a very good comic book, but they are not going to stop trying to push Kamala Khan as a big deal. And now that she's the first mutant in the MCU, card-carrying member of the X-Men team, they will not let you forget who she is, and they're going to be pushing this very, very, very hard. I'm surprised the headliner isn't like a Deadpool Wolverine team up or something like that. You know, since we do have Deadpool and Wolverine, the big movie coming out that a lot of people are going to be interested in, I imagine putting that on the front cover would draw some eyes, but you probably don't need to give that one away for free, I guess. You could probably charge for that if you're going to re-release that kind of stuff. You know, I think giving comic book retailers and fans stuff for free on things that you want to highlight, you know, is probably a good idea. I would curate it better. You know, no one really cares about Kamala Khan, the New Mutant. It's not a really good concept, and it's never going to work. You know, is Immortal Thor going to be a big deal? You know, Al Ewing did have a hit with Immortal Hulk. It doesn't seem to have transferred over to Immortal Thor. In a lot of ways, I do think at this point, Al Ewing is kind of a one-hit wonder. He probably is only going to have the one run that ended up being critically and commercially successful, you know, Immortal Hulk. And then everything else, people seem to like it, but it never seems to stay. And maybe they're trying to goose up the numbers there. But cool idea, cool initiative. I hope that they're paying for the shipping fees. Well, if it's from Penguin Random House, I know all the shipping is free. So comic book shops using Penguin Random House will be getting this scot-free and will be able to give it up to their customers without taking a dent in their pocket. I imagine it's not going to be that way through Diamond. The last bit of news, I don't think this is from ComicsPRO, but this is certainly Marvel related. Marvel Comics has teased an upcoming story, or maybe it's an event called Venom War. Details are scarce, but it appears Eddie Brock is fighting his own son, Dylan, in his story written by Al Ewing with art by Ivan Coelho. The Venom War kicks off in August. I really liked the Donny Cates Venom run. They had a weird idea when they were going to keep the title going, or I guess relaunch it after Donny Cates, where they were going to bring in Al Ewing to tell the Eddie Brock story, and then I think Ram V was going to tell the Dylan Brock story because Eddie was becoming the King in Black. He was like the new god of the symbiotes, whereas Dylan was going to become the new Venom. I stuck around for about 4 or 5 issues. It had no staying power for me whatsoever. It didn't really draw me in. And I know Ram V has left the title. I think they replaced him with Torn Grunbeck, and it seems to be kind of languishing at this point. It's not like a Trigon Raven situation where I wouldn't mind seeing the child defeat the parent or whatever. So Venom War doesn't do much for me. I do like Ivan Coelho a lot. He's a really, really fantastic artist. But Al Ewing does try. I mean, I didn't really like any of his stuff on Venom. It just never really did anything for me. So if you are enjoying the Venom series, though, and you like the direction they went with the 2 different contrasting story arcs where you had the Dylan story arc and you had the Eddie Brock story arc, well, they're going to come back together in a head with Venom War, where you're going to have a father, basically as a symbiote god, probably beat the crap out of his son and maybe steal a symbiote back. Not exactly something I'm excited about, but if you are, that's awesome. And if you're really loving it, let us know in the comments section why you're enjoying the Al Ewing Venom run, because I would love for my mind to be changed on that one, because I was not convinced on the early days. And it's one of those series that it doesn't feel important enough to where I'm dipping back in. Like the Fantastic Four run's been okay, but I jump back in every 2 or 3 issues because Fantastic Four do still seem, for reasons, to be important to me. Avengers is really average right now, but every 2 or 3 issues I'll come back in and see if something's happening that I like. I'm not feeling that way about Venom, but if you convince me otherwise, I would really appreciate that. Now, if you would like more comprehensive comic book coverage and certainly bigger conversations, you need to go check out the Thinking Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. We do a lot more comic book content there. We do a 2-hour comic book review session every single week for Jim. I've got a Q&A session where you can ask Doc questions and we will answer all your X-Men, DC, comic history, all those kinds of questions. And we also have a nice pop culture segment with Aaron Sparrow. We got exclusive reviews. We've got read-throughs of classic comic book stories. Lots of stuff going on there. If you are a big old nerd like me, that is the place to be.